There we go. So I want to get back into doing something that I had started a couple months ago, and life happened, and I stopped doing it. So we're going to get back into doing that sort of thing right now. So this is going to be my daily rant. So a bunch of things kind of occurred today. Um, one of which being that the Supreme Court held today that they held their discussions today on whether or not birthright citizenship should be a thing. On whether or not birthright citizenship. So I just wanted to check and make sure that the stream was live and that you could hear me. So today President Trump was at the Supreme Court for the first time, according to the news sources that I've been hearing, first time in history that a sitting president has ever actually sat in at a Supreme Court discussion, debate. I listened in. I forgot that it was going on today, or else I would have started live streaming it earlier today. But I caught part of it, the tail end of it, and mainly I caught kind of the tail end of the state or the attorney general's arguments. Then I kind of caught a bit of the um, the opposing side's arguments, and then kind of the rebuttal of the attorney general's office. So, but interestingly enough, so from what my sources that I've heard from, or the sources that I've seen, are saying is Trump was there for pretty much the whole opening part of the attorney general, stayed for a few minutes of the opposing views, and then left kind of midway through that. Um, I don't read anything into that. I think that he probably just had other things he had to get doing, so it's not like he was just, leaving because they started their opposing views. Um, but I will say part of what I heard, um, and this is something that you might not hear from a lot of the mainstream media and things like that. I personally have another take on how it went. Listening to it, I do think it's going to be a toss up. And I think a lot of people will be like, "Oh no, there's no way it'll be a toss up." Of course, this is going to go in favor of maintaining birthright citizenship. I don't have a position either way. Um, Although personally, I think that if you are born here and you get citizenship by being born here, if that really is the way that it's going to be done, I think that it should be a fact of you should not be allowed to support other countries. I think that means no protesting in the streets of waving other nations' flags. Because here's the thing: you're here in America, right? You're American. You should be raising an American flag. And I really believe, and this just goes for anybody, no other country's flag on American soil should go above the American flag. There's people out there that do that. There's people out there that'll put the Mexican flag above the American flag. There's people out there that put the Canadian flag over the American flag on American soil. That's not cool. Um, but I do think that there's a solid argument that can be made. And the good thing about me being an attorney and doing what I do is I generally can see the other side of an argument. But usually before it even comes to. So when you're looking at that, though, you've got a situation that you got a situation that is looking at, you know, the words of the actual document of what the amendment says. So let's pull it up actually. So the 14th Amendment of the United States. All right, so let's shrink my video. I'm over here, and we'll make this a little bit bigger. Move that out of the way. Make me smaller. That's okay. I don't need to be that big. All right, so we'll take a look at this. All right, so this says that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to this jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property, not pursuit of happiness, like so many people like to say, without due process of law. Nor deny to any persons within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. I think this is where we're really getting into this kind of nuanced situation in looking at this, because we're talking about all persons born or naturalized in the United States. I think one of the big key words on this is the word and. It's not or, it's not if, it's not but, it's not is, it may, anything. It says and. So understanding the legal aspects, having a law degree like I do, and being a practicing attorney, when I read something that says and, it means all of those things must apply. If it was a statute where it's like you can meet one of these things based on these factors and there's an or, then all you need is one. In this case, you need all. So all persons born or naturalized in the United States. So that means people that are born on American soil or people that are become naturalized citizens. Does that include people that are permanent residents? Well, they're not naturalized citizens, right? And they weren't born here. Now, you can give up your citizenship to another country and swear allegiance to the United States and become an American citizen. Or if you do that, I think that then okay, you should, if you've sworn your allegiance and you've sworn in to be an American, then you become a naturalized citizen at that point. Then the question's hinging, and this is one of the things in listening to the argument before the Supreme Court, just the bit I heard. I'm trying to get the full audio, but it hasn't been fully loaded up yet, so I'm still working on that. But just kind of what I even heard, there was a lot of discussion by both Democratic appointed Supreme Court justices as well as Republican appointed Supreme Court justices. There was questions on both sides that were asked to both parties, or sorry, both sides, that were asked by all the judges. That basically was like, are we talking about what's subject, or who is subject to the jurisdiction thereof? Well, I think this is where we're kind of getting into this other nuanced area where I think the Supreme Court is going to obviously have to take up, if they haven't already, take up this matter of, again, what is subject to the jurisdiction thereof? Well, and one of the things that's actually pointed out by one of the Supreme Court justices, I think it was Sotomayor, but I'm not 100% sure, so don't hold me to it. But I think it was Sotomayor that said, well, if she goes to Japan and she's visiting and she commits a crime on Japanese soil, then she can be punished by Japanese law, and that would make her subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Correct in the fact of, yes, you're by traveling there, you're subject to their laws by agreeing to travel there. I think that's probably part of, the visas or whatever you get by going to that country. Just like you get a visa to come here, you're a visitor here, you commit a crime here, then yeah, you're subject to our laws here in America. That doesn't make you a resident, or doesn't make you a naturalized citizen or being born here. You're still a naturalized citizen of the country that you came from if you're here visiting. If you're here illegally, and I'm not getting into the debate of, that sort of thing. If you came to the country, whether it's civil, whether it's criminal, whatever, I'm not getting into that debate today. But no matter what, if you come into our country, if you come into the United States of America illegally, you do not have a valid visa, you do not have valid permit to enter, you're not here as a visitor with, express written, you just illegally crossed the border and you have made your residence here, you're not domiciled here. You might be living here, but that does not mean that you were born here, and it does not mean that you're naturalized here. So if you're not born here and naturalized here, then you're not here legally. Now, I know that there's some exceptions in case law, that there was a lot of arguments in there about ambassadors and, cases where people came here, they had children here, but then they were given the citizenship, but then they went back to their home countries. I think Ireland was one of them, and there were some other ones that were talked about. I understand that view. But at the same time, those people left. I don't think that that's really applicable. Well, then I think one of the things that was raised is also regarding the Native Americans. They use the term Indians. I will use the term Native Americans because that's, in my mind, what they are. Nonetheless, the ones that were here when we became, well, they're sovereign nations, so they're subject to their own laws and rules. But all of the United States is owned by the United States, right? So all the land here, now granted, yes, there's territories, but if a Native American is not born on reservation land and they're born in a, for example, here in Arizona, we have a lot of Native Americans. We've got several tribes that are here. There's, just to name a few, there's the Hopi, there's the Navajo, there's the, of course, I'm drawing a blank now, but I could think of like at least 5 of them earlier. But anyways, there's multiple tribes that are here in Arizona that they have reservation land. If the child is born on the reservation, is that child born on American soil? Well, that's the question then. So does that child have, are they naturalized citizens? I think that that's a yes, because they were born in the United States and typically their ancestors were from the United States, whether or not it was on native land or reservation, or if it was, in here in Arizona, but, or like in the governmental land or state land. Nonetheless, when you look at the aspect of this, okay, you've got a situation where, let's say somebody from the Navajo Nation comes down. The Navajo Nation is up around the northeastern part of the state. They have a huge reservation up there. One of the bigger cities that's close by is Flagstaff. Although Flagstaff's not really a very large city, it's, respectively, it's probably one of the larger cities in Arizona, but it's not that big of a city. But anyways, if they don't have a lot of shops and stuff on the reservation, they come down here. They come down to Flagstaff and go shopping and do their shopping and stuff, and then, there's a pregnant person and she goes into labor and she gives birth at the hospital. Okay, that child was born on native land, or sorry, they were born in U.S. soil because they were born at, Flagstaff Medical Center. And you go from there up to Okay, well then this question is, are they subject to it? And this is part of the argument that was made. And again, this is one of those things I don't necessarily have an opinion on either way with this aspect of it. My opinion, I guess maybe the natives were already here. Like they should have any 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 child that's born of the Native Americans should be considered U.S. citizens, whether or not they're part of the Navajo Nation or whatever tribal nations that they are. And I say that as I'm sure there's some Cherokee blood in my lineage somewhere. At least that's what was always said. However, I've always been told to, be careful cutting my finger because I might, that blood might come out. Just kind of a jokingly aspect of it. But um, nonetheless, again, I think Native Americans are Native Americans. They're Americans. They are protected by the 14th Amendment. I think the biggest thing with the 14th Amendment is, they wanted to make it where slaves from the children of slaves that were born here in the U.S. were given the citizenship. Um, Here's the difference between where I think is we're getting into nuanced situations. A slave that was brought here of their non-choice, like it wasn't, they didn't do it of their own choice to come here and come to the United States. They simply were brought here because their people sold them. It doesn't matter their skin color, because I will say flat out, I mean, I'm of Irish descent. There's lots of Irish slaves as well. Um, but anyway, slaves were brought here, and then they had their children here. It's not like they were going to be sent back. Once they were no longer slaves, they were going to be sent back to their, home country or anything like that. So, um, so, but again, it doesn't matter. The whole point was to make sure that the children of slaves, whenever they were, here in our country, were, born here. They were naturalized and they were citizens. So that was, I think, the biggest thing. I don't think the founders or the frame, not the founders, but the framers, when they were doing the 14th Amendment, I don't think that they necessarily anticipated what would be of our country today. Um, but again, I think I think that this goes a lot deeper than just what is being argued, and I do think that there are a lot of consequences, for lack of a better term, of things that could occur with this situation that um, that this decision by the Supreme Court could have repercussions for centuries. I'm not saying that if the Supreme Court says, well, no, if you're here illegally, then your children that are born here are not citizens. I'm not saying that that should be the case. I'm not saying that should be the case. What I'm saying is you're looking at a situation that's we're talking millions of people that have been born here that could potentially be affected by this. And I think there's been multi generations that have occurred. So this obviously is not talking about that. I think it should be a point of going forward. I think it should be a point of what the term of anchor babies is, what a lot of them commonly refer to as, because I think there was one good argument that was made, or a really strong point that was made by the Attorney General, and actually I think it was actually made by Justice Alito, that said, there's 8 billion people that are just a plane ride away from coming to America and becoming, having children be born here to get citizenship. One of the other things I heard on listening to the news today was that, there's a huge market for surrogacy to be done here in the United States, in which the Americans Chinese nationals are doing surrogacy to come over here and to have their their have children be born in the United States via surrogacy, so that way they can have a person or have a child here, and what we quote unquote call anchor babies. Again, I'm not saying whether or not that is the truth or not. Again, this is just things that I've heard kind of today of listening on and off. I know there's been two major. It's one of two major, one of two or three major topics that have been discussed in the news cycles today. But either way you look at it, you got to think. Obviously there's some definite questions that need to be addressed on whether or not a person born here in the United States but is to a parent that is not here legally in the United States, the question then is, does the United States have jurisdiction over that person? Because this says that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. The question hinges on whether or not the children or the parents of the children that are born here in the U.S., if they are subject to the jurisdiction. Again, if they're not born here, then they're not U.S. citizens, period. If they're not born here or naturalized here, they're not U.S. citizens. I think this is all dependent upon whether or not the children of those illegal immigrants that are in the country illegally, whether they broke a civil infraction or a criminal infraction, I don't care which one you want to call it. It is what it is. My personal opinion, either way, it's still criminal. It's just a matter of the severity of the level of it. I'm not saying that we should deport everybody illegally. I do agree with the worst of the first should go. Now, with that said, at the same time, if we can't determine who exactly that is because we don't know, then if you're found to be here, then okay, bye. Take that for what it's worth. I do think that we're looking at a situation that this is going to have, like I said, it's going to have repercussions for decades, centuries, if even centuries. So, but again, they're they're an airplane ride away from having a child that's an anchor baby. Then we have these children here that are subject to it. But then, if the illegal parents or the parents that are not here legally go and fly out. Let's think about the movie The Terminal. Tom Hanks, amazing actor. Don't like his political views, amazing actor. I think if I was honestly making a Mount Rushmore of actors, I would probably put Tom Hanks on there. I think he's an amazing actor. He's had some great roles. He's Castaway and The Terminal was a phenomenal movie. But look at The Terminal. The man came here. He had a valid visa, but as soon as he landed, or while he was halfway through the air, his visa was invalidated because his country was no longer in existence. And then he had to remain in the airport. He couldn't fly back home because his country didn't exist, so he wasn't recognized to go back home. He couldn't go out into, I think it was JFK that he flew into, or LaGuardia, or one of the two. But he couldn't go out into New York City because his country wasn't recognized, so CDP wouldn't let him out into the country. So he was kind of in limbo. I think that's kind of the way you look at it is, like, look at this, you come into the country, but you're not here legally, or if you're here legally on a visa. I think this is why I honestly think this is why a lot of airlines don't allow women to fly if they're so far along in pregnancy. I think they classify it as there could be complications. I think realistically, as a lot of it has to do with they don't want the parent to go to the country and then have a child there and then have this issue. I may be entirely wrong on that, and that's fine. If I'm in wrong, I will admit that I'm wrong. But I do think that that has a lot to do with it. So it'll be interesting to see what the results are. I don't know if this is necessarily going to be one that falls on party lines. As far as for that, I think I was actually very surprised at some of the questions and some of the justices, it was obvious what their ruling is going to be. The question is just whether or not they're the majority or the dissenting justices. Like Justice Brown, obviously, with the way that she was, you could tell kind of how she was leaning. It wasn't leaning. I think she was laid all the way over to the left. But, I do think that that's kind of... that was kind of obvious with that. However, I think some of the other ones that you may think would automatically kind of side with the current administration would, it's more questionable. So again, I don't know if this is going to fall into party lines. I don't think it's going to be a super majority. I don't think it's going to be a 6-3. Or anything like that. I think if anything, it probably will end up being a 5-4 decision. Now the question just is whether or not, if it is party lines, whether or not the deciding vote lands on one side or the other. And it shouldn't be political. I mean, I'm a firm believer that the Supreme Court should not be political, period. However, I also know I'm not an idiot and know that, every person has their kind of political belief on the situation. I don't think that, just like I don't think celebrities should put out their political views, I don't think anybody really should put them out, to begin with. So, I'm just, pardon me for just a second. I'm going to have I've got some news media pulled up and that I'm kind of listening to. I don't think you guys can hear it, so that's fine. I don't think it's going to jeopardize me in being any sort of I don't know what just happened. I don't know what just happened to my window that I had this thing playing on, but let's see. I don't know. I don't know where that window went. Okay, there we go. All right. Looks like we're going to get a presidential address tonight, regarding the one of the other major topics of what's going on that we'll talk about here in just a little bit. But again, I think it's going to be interesting. We won't find out an opinion of the Supreme Court until sometime in June, probably the end of June, beginning of July. I think it'll be interesting if it's the beginning of July because it'll be right before the nation's 250th birthday. So it may have some sort of effect on the birthday, the nation, whether or not it be celebrating or not. Some of the other topics that came up today. Artemis 2 is set for launch here in just just a little over an hour. I think around 6 o'clock on the East Coast from Cape Canaveral at the Kennedy Space Station. As if it doesn't get scrubbed, there is talk about potentially being scrubbed because of some wind in the area. And essentially, if various reports say there's about 8.5 to 9 million pounds of thrust that are in the rocket that are going to be compelled into the sky, and if something were to go wrong, then they've got it set up where the capsule itself, the pod that has the astronauts in it, would be ejected off of the rocket and go thousands of feet in the air within seconds, and then the wind would potentially cause them to land. Well, they want to make sure that it's a situation that they're going to land. If that happens, they want to land in the ocean. They don't want them to land on Earth because that would potentially, be catastrophic if they landed on the Earth, or sorry, on land surface instead of in the ocean. So we'll see. I don't think it's going to be. I mean, again, I don't know. I'll say this. I remember back in, I want to say it was 2004, I believe. Maybe it was 2003. There was a space launch from Cape Canaveral. Let me see. Not 23, 2003. Yeah, so there was Space Shuttle Columbia launched on January 16th, 2023. I was actually living in Florida at the time. I was living in Orlando at the time, and I could see the space shuttle take off from my apartment in Orlando. And I know Orlando is not close to Cape Canaveral. I keep saying Cape Canaveral. I'm pretty sure it was Cape Canaveral. Whatever it was, in Jacksonville, the Kennedy Space Center there in Jacksonville. It was they launched off was successful. They were performing like 80 exhibits or 80 experiments in space, and then, as we all know, during the re-entry, the piece of foam debris that had broke off during liftoff or during the launch, had damaged the panels on the left wing, and then once the upon reentry, the damaged wing allowed gases to penetrate the wing structure, leading to the loss of the vehicle and crew about 16 minutes before they were scheduled to land. So I remember watching the takeoff, from my apartment in Orlando, seeing it. I could see it go through the sky, and I thought this is a monumentous occasion. And then, 16 days later, we were all witnessed to the tragedy that occurred and the loss of the the people that were on board the space shuttle. I think there was, what was it, like 8 people? I think 8. Yeah, the 8 people on board the space shuttle. Um, I I thought it was one of those things that was monumentous in witnessing that in history and seeing that, and even being hundreds of miles away, still being able to see the rocket actually going up in space. And um, so I think that this is a very monumentous thing. I know we've had some launches since then. I know that um, you know it's going to be interesting. I think part of what they're saying, why they want to do this, is they want to, I guess they're saying that this 10-day mission is going to propel humans the furthest away from the planet that they've ever been. There's one Canadian and 3 Americans, I believe, that are on board the space shuttle that is set for launch. Um, and I think that it's going to be a historical aspect. 3 men, 1 woman, because there's only 2 genders. So 3 men, 2 women, or sorry, 3 men, 1 woman are flying up into space today. They're going to go around the Earth. My understanding is I think they go around the Earth 1.5 times and then shoot up, go around the moon, and then come back, and then they'll land in the um, on the other side. So they'll land in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Mexico. So they'll be back in during that. Like after about 10 days. Um, I think it's interesting. I don't know a whole lot about what this is doing. I don't know if there's any implementation of, um, the of Elon Musk's SpaceX that have been involved in this, or if this is just going to be again like how we used to do old NASA things, where the parts are just a kind of one-time use and that's it. Unlike where Elon Musk has, caused parts to go up space shuttle, and then people come back, and then they, salvage the other pieces and reuse them for rockets and stuff. I don't know. This is a NASA project, so I'm not sure if this project is if it's put on between a joint. I don't know if it's a joint project between SpaceX and NASA, or if this is just a NASA thing, or if this is just um, if this is just. It looks like it's, and I'm looking up right now. Um, yeah, it looks like it's just NASA. I don't think it has anything to do with. I don't think it's anything to do with SpaceX. So, um, but that doesn't mean that Elon didn't have anything to do with them helping do it. I will say this based off of the videos I've seen of the interior of the capsule itself. It definitely does not have the same visuals that SpaceX aircraft have. Now, I was talking with my friend about this, and he kind of said something jokingly. He was like, "Oh, the dark side of the moon scares him." Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think so too. I want, you know, I'm excited. I'm always a very inquisitive person, so I always want to know about everything. I always want to know the, you know, the truth is out there, I guess, as we would say. So I've always wanted to know. I've always been intrigued. Knowing anything and everything I can about everything. It's just kind of my nature of wanting to know. Um, but when looking at the aspect, is the question is okay? Are we? I, yeah. I'll maybe one day I'll share my opinion on that. But yeah, I'm interested to see. I want to see how it goes. I can't wait to see, some of the information that's retrieved, and maybe there'll be some video. Maybe we'll have some video of the actual thing, and prove once and for all to put all the flat earthers quiet to that our world is round. Um, I Yeah, I'm excited. I hope that it goes off without a hitch. I hope that, the last time I witnessed a launch, obviously I'm in Arizona now, so I'm not going to see the rocket launch, from where I'm at. So I may see a chemtrail, very, 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 very minuscule chemtrail at some point in the sky, but I doubt it, highly doubt it. Um, but I am excited, to see kind of what happens with the mission. I hope that it is a success and there's no catastrophic loss, on exit or on reentry. Um, so yeah, no, I think it'd be really interesting to see that's going to happen at like 6 o'clock or, I think the actual time is 6:24 Eastern time is when it's scheduled for launch. So we're talking it's 3:17. So about 3 hours from now, I guess maybe. Oh wait, yeah, six. So right now it's 5:17 on the West Coast. So a little bit over an hour from now. Yeah. So about a little bit over an hour from now, it will they will take off. They're already in the cockpit, strapped down, ready to go. Um, so I'm intrigued to see what happens with that. Um, the talk is also that they want to eventually build a space station on the moon. I think that that's part of what the goals of hopefully having man into Mars in the near future. Um, I don't know. I again, my inquisitive mind. I want to know. And I know that there's things that I won't learn about in this life until I'm on the other side, and hopefully there's an eternity for me to learn all of the things that I wanted to know. So, I could see myself spending quite a bit of eternity just kind of gaining knowledge of just all the things that I wanted to know. So, um, but the good thing is, if there's an eternity to have to do it, I can spend I'll have all the time that I want to figure it out. Um, so some of the other issues that are in the media today or have come. So President Trump is going to have a public address tonight regarding the Iranian war. We've now been in war for a little over a month. I know whenever he first launched this excursion, as he calls it, it was done where he said, 4 to 6 weeks. We're at that a little over that 4 week period, probably about that 5 week period. So, yes, you might need to extend it for a couple weeks. Maybe he said 6 to 8 weeks. I don't remember exactly what he said, but either way, it's been less than 2 months. Just been over a month now. But now he's talking about it might end early. So it'll be interesting to see what he has to say during his public address tonight. I personally, there's some things that he said that I agree with, and whenever it comes to it, there's also some things that he said that I don't agree with. And again, that's with any political person. There's no political person that we, as politicians, or sorry, as citizens, we don't agree with all politicians 100% of the time. There's no politician that we agree with 100% of the time. But the man definitely had an agenda that he it was an agenda that he went around drumming up points behind it and saying campaigning on it. They campaigned on it, and he's following through with his campaign promises. And there's a lot of things that the man campaigned on that majority of Americans sided with, and that's why he got elected for a second term. The only second president ever in our history to not have consecutive terms, if they have served 2 terms. So, oh, that's vulgar. Sorry. Um, I just it'd be interesting to see. It'd be interesting to see what happens with that. So, um, I do, yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what he has to say about it. I want us to, I want us to finish what we started. I want us to do this as swiftly as we did. I want to do it with as little casualty to our troops as possible. As a veteran, I will say I know first and foremost that whenever you raise your right hand and you take that oath to, support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that you basically will obey all the orders of those appointed over you, you're basically signing a blank check and giving it to Uncle Sam. And that blank check is payable up to and including your life. That is something that you make that determination on whenever you take that oath and you say yes that you will serve and defend. There's no oath whenever you get out that says, okay, now I can take that back and say I don't have to do it. No, once you're a military person, you're always a military person, and that's my aspect of it. I have tons of friends that are Marines, and they'll tell you, oh, once a Marine, always a Marine. Soldiers will tell you, once a soldier, always a soldier. Sailors will tell you, once a sailor, always a sailor. I think the only one that we actually give a little bit of excuse to is the Air Force, and that's okay. That's our little special, little our special younger sibling that we always look out for, and nobody else can pick on, but we can definitely pick on. So nonetheless, I think that it is interesting But we take that oath and we're supporting Depends. So when we do it, we know that there's a possibility. I joined during the peacetime. I joined in 2001 prior to 9/11. I was actually in boot camp when 9/11 happened. And when I signed up, I didn't think we were going to be going to war anytime soon. And then, sure enough, before I even got out of boot camp, we were already engaged in Operation Enduring Freedom. And, it, nonetheless, you made that commitment and you abide by it. So I don't think there's any military people out there that, especially ones that have gotten in over the last, I don't know, 25 years, 26 years. Well, let's not say 26, 25 years almost, because 9/11 was 25 years ago. Anybody that's gotten involved or enlisted in the last 25 years, they kind of knew that they might be going to war and go and they'd be willing to sacrifice their life. So with that said, I understand the family aspect of it, and trust me, if my kids are old enough to go in, I would definitely have some concerns. I've got a buddy whose son turns 18 here in just a few short months, and he's already signed up, for the delayed entry program. So, and he'll be going and fighting. He knows the risks that he signed up for. I don't know. Again, I don't know if I'd be. I think it's a rite of passage. I think every man should have to do it. It's not a man or woman thing, but I do think that all men should serve at some point in the military if they are able to. With that said, if my son came to me and said that he wanted to join, granted, I got a few years to worry about that. I might have a different opinion whenever it's actually my own flesh and blood. I don't know, but as a person that was actually in it, probably not. I would probably be all supportive for it, and but ask me that again in 10 years. It also depends on where our country goes over the next 10 years too. So other thing that happened in the news that I wanted to rant on today. So let's see, we talked about Iran, we talked about Artemis, and we talked about birthright citizenship and the Supreme Court case. There's Tiger. I guess there's Tiger Woods that we can talk about. I don't care that he's a celebrity. I've seen I've watched Tiger Woods play whenever I was young. I watched Tiger Woods play, and I could tell that the guy was a protege, or he was a prodigy. He was a prodigy, and he was going to be, the GOAT of golf. I do still believe that he is one of the GOATs of golf. He is one of the greatest golfers to ever live. Right up there with Jack Nicholson, right up there with, Arnold Palmer. You've got those greats of the game, right? However, with that said, his celebrity status should not get him any special treatment. The man has, whether it's alcohol, whether it's pills, and I get it. He's gone through a shit ton of surgeries. He's had, countless surgeries, and he's had many injuries, and I get it. He's had the near death accident that he had back in, I think 2009 or something like that. I get it. And then, he had the other accident, but I get it, all right? So I understand that, and I understand substance abuse, and I understand substance abuse is it is an addiction. But the man should not receive special treatment just because he's Tiger Woods, just because he's dating the former daughter-in-law and dating the former daughter-in-law of the President of the United States. I think Trump has done the right thing by distancing himself from that and basically saying, look, he is his friend and he's glad that he's okay, but he is not going to have a comment on it. I think Tiger needs to get the help that he needs to get, but at the same time, he should not get special treatment just because he is a celebrity and he has money to, get out of this type of situation. If it was me or if it was anybody else out there, if we got a third DUI and so long, like, I mean, we'd be under the jail. Like like I let the facts fall where the facts are going to fall. I get it. I understand that. And I agree. Let the facts come out and be what they're going to come out and be. But if it turns out to be that this is the case of what's being reported, the man should face consequences. Dude, you're rich. Get a driver. Get a driver. There's no excuse. Get a driver. If Jim Bob off the street can, know to get an Uber. I mean, hell, they got driverless cars. If you're really worried about your privacy like you say you are, get a Waymo. They got private driverless cars that you can get to take you to your destination. I'm not sure if they're in Florida or not, but they're prevalent out here. I'm sure they're all over. Just get a cab, get an Uber, get hire a personal driver that's always with you, or that you have on call where you want to go out, then you have your driver take you and you have your driver come back and get you when you're done, or even you pay your driver to just sit there and wait for you until you're ready to go. Like, I mean, again, you're rich, dude, you can afford it. It's just kind of, it's asinine that a rich celebrity can think that they get away with whatever they want to get away with just because they're a celebrity and they can get it done. So, I mean, it's funny. I watched the Five on Fox News. I watch it every day. I record it and I watch it, and there's some other things that I watch, but I always trying to catch up on my news and stuff every night after work. And listening to Greg Gutfeld said on there, like, I think the best thing was, when the sportscaster was on there after this happened, after this broke last week about Tiger having the DUI, and Greg's like, I don't care. I agree. I don't care. This is not what should be making the news. The only reason it's making the news is because he's a celebrity. And I get it. Again, he is a GOAT. He is one of the greatest of all times whenever it comes to golf. Okay, I respect that. But that doesn't mean that, because here's the thing, and this is what's so funny and so just, it's what's so just, it's so hypocritical of celebrities. What is it the celebrities always say? I want to be treated like any other person. I want to be treated like a normal person. I want to be treated like anybody else. I want to be able to go do this and do that and do this and do that and not be treated as a celebrity. But then as soon as they screw around and do something stupid, and whether it's stupid or not, it's stupid because he got behind the damn wheel of a car. Granted, yes, I'm glad nobody was hurt, including himself, seriously. Or at all, really. I guess he wasn't really hurt at all. But I get it. I understand that aspect of it. But you can't sit here and talk out one side of your face and say, oh, I just want to be treated like a normal person. And then turn around and that normal person, that other person who wants to be treated like a normal person, being like, oh, I'm a celebrity. I should get special treatment because I got a DUI. Look at Justin Timberlake. Justin Timberlake's footage just came out from his DUI arrest. And, I don't care what the guy says. He literally, in the video, was like, the officer's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm on a world tour. And the officer asked him to explain that. And he was like, it's kind of hard to explain. I'm Justin Timberlake. Like, if you want to be an average person, You don't just go out there and you get it pulled over. Oh, I'm Jimmy John from Loboken. No, you don't like. You go to jail. You get DUI. You go to jail like the rest of Americans that get a DUI. I you can't have it both ways. And this is the problem that I hate about this situation is you have celebrities that like they want to be treated like normal people, but then they want that special treatment whenever it benefits them. I worked in restaurants or when I lived in Orlando, I worked in restaurants, and celebrities came in those restaurants all the time. It was right outside of the airport. So we get a lot of people that stop by there quite often. And what's interesting to me is there were some that um, were so low key, just didn't want to be bothered, didn't make a big deal about who they were. I remember there was one when I worked at this one restaurant, um, big wrestling promotion back in this 2003 ish, sometime during 2003. Big wrestling promotion was having a show in Daytona Beach. Orlando was the largest airport in the area, so a lot of people flew into Orlando. I worked for a restaurant that was right outside of the Orlando airport, very busy. And a bunch of these sports entertainment stars, screw it, a bunch of these wrestlers came in. One came in on his own during the lunch rush. Well, it wasn't even really a rush. It was kind of like during the kind of like between lunch and dinner, and sat alone at the bar. And I just happened to be I was doing expo, so I was expediting. I was the expediter, so I was expediting the food. I was getting the food from the kitchen, garnishing it, and putting all the other stuff on the plate, the sides and stuff like that, and sending it out. And our the runners or our wait staff or whatever were busy at the time, so I just was like, fine, I'll just take this plate. It's the only order that we had really waiting right there. So I took the plate out to the person sitting at the bar, and I walked out there. I looked at him, set the food down, and then I walked away, but I had to stop and take a double take, and I was like, wait a minute. And I looked back, and he was looking at me, and he smiled, and he was missing a tooth, and that might tell you who it was. And I, being a fan, was like, well, shit, that's who this is. But I didn't bother him. I didn't go and be like, oh my God, sir, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I did, I went out a little bit later and was filling his drink or giving him a refill or whatever. Cause like I said, we were slow. And, he started talking to me, and most chill down the earth guy I've ever met. And, again, I treated him like average Joe, cause that's what he was, but he offered up the information and was like, like, he's like, I know you know who I am, and I appreciate you being, respectful about the fact that it's, of not making a big deal about it. And I was like, yeah, I recognize you. I am a fan, but but obviously you're just trying to have your lunch before, like before you go on whatever. And he actually was like, we're having a show in Daytona. I didn't know the show was going on at that time. I didn't have TV at the time, so I really wasn't sure what was going on with everything. But they were having a house show in Daytona, and he was like, "We're having a house show in Daytona." He's like, he's like, "You're working the day shift. Do you have tonight off?" And I was like, "No, but I can, I can potentially make it where I could." And I arranged my schedule where I got off that night, and actually, he gave me tickets. He gave me 2 tickets to go to the house show and his autograph. I didn't ask for it. He gave it to me. He offered it, and I gladly accepted it. Um, Went to the show a little bit after the show. Went back. A lot of the wrestlers going back into Orlando to go and fly out to wherever they're going. I think at the time, this is before the like, what do they call it, the training center or whatever was down there in Orlando or in Florida. This was when like there were still two huge promotions. Actually, no, because the other promotions were gone. It was all owned by the one promotion by that point. Um, but it was before all of the huge, like the training facility came in Florida like it is now. Um, but anyways, after the show, me and my roommates, we went back into town. We're like, dude, let's stop and get some food. This place is open late, and we knew that we could get some good food, and I knew I could get it at a good price and discount because I worked there. So we stopped in, and I walk in, it's packed, and I see the same individual that I saw at lunch, along with three other wrestlers sitting at a table. And I walk in. Obviously, I'm not working at this point. I'm off, and I walk in, and he recognizes me, and he's like, "Hey!" And he tells me to come over. So I come over, and I'm standing at this table with these four wrestlers, um, three of whom are no longer with us. And I got the autograph of all four of them right then, and that one I did ask for because I was right there, but that was also because this guy brought me into the inner circle and introduced me. He brought me in and kind of, he remembered me from earlier in the day. And again, all of them so humble, so down to earth. And they weren't asking or seeking special treatment. They were just four guys hanging out, having some food and a beer before they went to go get on their plane to fly wherever they were going back to. And just wanted to be celebrities. But then you get these other celebrities that, they come into places and they demand special attention and they demand to be recognized. But then when it later on, they're like, I just want peace. It's like, you know, um, it's like some celebrities are just like, they make music or whatever, and they're like, even in their songs, they're like, I just want to be left alone in peace when I'm eating or feeding my daughter, and things like that. They just want to be left alone in public, but yet they want that celebrity experience, and they want to use that celebrity experience, or that celebrity status to, put their name out there and everything. So I mean, this all goes without saying is like, look, you can't have it both ways. Either you're a celebrity and you expect special treatment, or you're not a celebrity and you want to be treated like everybody else. But even if you are a celebrity and you expect, like special treatment, you don't deserve special treatment automatically just because you're a celebrity. Um, you know, I I think our country gives too much clout to celebrities. Period. Um, but I mean, what do you guys think? What do you? Again, this is just kind of my daily rant. I'm gonna try and do this on a daily basis and do it. And this is a little over an hour on this one. But I think that that's what I'm trying to do is maybe do like an hour daily rant and just kind of go and just kind of bring up some thoughts that I've had throughout the day. And so hopefully see you guys again soon. And if you like content like this, then go ahead and click the link to subscribe, and like and subscribe and follow for more content. I want to try and get back to doing what I had previously been doing too, of the wrestling commentary videos. I had to take a break from that. We'll see. I don't know what's going to happen. right now there's a lot of things up in the air. So, but again, this is just kind of my way of maybe getting a little venting out across. So, in the meantime, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you guys on the flip side. Until later, peace.